Ever wonder when a great power starts to decline? It's not when it's defeated in a big war. It's when the most important question changes. For centuries, rising empires ask, how do we grow? But then, a subtle shift happens. The new question becomes, how do we hold on to what we have? This is the critical turning point. Resources that once fueled innovation are now spent on preservation. Energy that drove expansion is redirected to defense. The focus moves from seizing opportunities to managing obligations. Think about it. Rome began spending more to defend its vast borders than to explore new ones. The British Empire spent more to maintain its colonies than it did building them in the first place. Today's powers are no different, spending fortunes to stabilize existing systems rather than creating better ones. The empire becomes reactive, constantly putting out fires, and a reactive power always loses the initiative, setting the stage for its own slow decline. Thanks for watching. Ever notice how empires, big or small, eventually hit a wall? It's not always a dramatic collapse. Sometimes, it's a quiet shift in mindset. There's a crucial turning point where the big question changes. It's no longer how do we grow, but how do we hold on to what we have? This is where the trouble starts. Resources that once fueled innovation and discovery get redirected to preservation and defense. Think about it. Ancient Rome started spending more on defending its vast borders than on exploring new frontiers. The British Empire poured more money into maintaining its colonies than on building new enterprises. This shift makes an empire reactive, not proactive. And in the grand game of history, reactive powers always lose the initiative. They're always playing catch-up, plugging leaks in a dam that's about to burst. It's a subtle change, but it's the beginning of the end. Ever noticed how late-stage empires all seem to share one dangerous belief? They think, this is just temporary. Think about it. All the warning signs are there, but they're dismissed. Anyone who speaks up, any critic, gets pushed to the side. And real, meaningful reform, that's always a problem for tomorrow. The Roman Empire postponed crucial changes for generations. The British Empire genuinely believed its reign would last forever. And today, many powerful nations put their faith in technology, thinking it can magically fix deep, structural issues. But here's the tough lesson from history. It doesn't offer any second chances for this kind of thinking. When you delay adapting to new realities for too long, you eventually lose the ability to adapt at all. Adaptation delayed becomes adaptation denied. What do you think? What's the most dangerous moment for any great power? It's not decline, it's denial. Think about it. Every empire in history only recognized its collapse long after it had already lost its leadership position. By the time the decline becomes obvious to everyone, the outcome is already set in stone. Sure, these empires might survive as nations. They might even remain influential or adapt in some ways. But their dominance, that always ends. History doesn't just destroy empires, it replaces them. The modern world, for all its advancements, still plays by these ancient rules. Real power still hinges on a few key things: adaptability, efficiency, legitimacy, and flexibility. The rising powers of today are facing the exact same test. It's not because history is cruel or has some grand design against them. It's much simpler than that. Systems get old, and when systems age, they have two choices: evolve or make way for new ones. This is the critical lesson. Empires don't fall because their enemies defeat them in a single, glorious battle. They fall because they stop changing. They become rigid, complacent, and convinced of their own eternal strength. They fall from within, long before the final push comes from the outside. History is patient. It doesn't rush. It waits. And when a power becomes too comfortable, too sure of itself, history simply takes back what it once gave. Every empire rises with the belief that it has somehow escaped the patterns of the past, that this time will be different, and every single one falls, proving that it never did. The rules haven't changed. The only question is, who is paying attention? Thanks for watching. If this made you think, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into how the world really works. See you in the next one. Have you ever wondered why every great empire in history eventually falls? It's a pattern as old as civilization itself, and it starts with a story. A story every rising power tells itself. From the moment an empire is born, usually through struggle and conflict, it starts weaving a narrative. It's a comforting tale, one that says, we are different. Our dominance isn't just a fleeting moment in time. Our system is better, our leaders are wiser, and we've finally figured it all out. They believe they've reached the end of history. Think about it. Rome was convinced it had established an eternal order, a Pax Romana, that would last forever. The British Empire believed its mastery of global trade and law was a permanent state of being. And today's powers often look at technology, at our interconnected world, and think that this time, collapse is simply impossible. We're too advanced, too complex, too smart to fail. But history has a long memory. It has heard this exact story countless times before, and frankly, history has never been impressed. Here's the great paradox, the ultimate deception that empires fall for. They don't collapse when they are weak and vulnerable. No, they fall when they are at their absolute strongest, at the very peak of their power. This is the trap. It's a chain reaction. Immense strength breeds unwavering confidence. This confidence fuels relentless expansion, a push to grow bigger, to control more. But this expansion creates staggering complexity. The system becomes a tangled web of dependencies, so vast and intricate that it loses all its flexibility. It becomes brittle, unable to adapt to new challenges. And when the unexpected crisis arrives, and it always does, the entire magnificent structure shatters under its own weight. This isn't about ideology, or right versus wrong. It's pure mechanics. It's a law of political physics. And the one thing about mechanics, it doesn't care what you believe. The cycle continues, whether we want it to or not.
No empire ever begins with ambition. It begins with necessity. Think about it. Rome rose because survival demanded unwavering discipline. The British Empire grew because securing trade and its own safety required expansion. And America? It rose because its industrial efficiency simply outpaced all of its rivals. In this early, hungry stage, all rising powers share the exact same traits. They reward competence. They innovate relentlessly. They adapt faster than their competitors. And most importantly, they punish inefficiency. The entire system is lean. It's mean. Mistakes get corrected, and they get corrected quickly. Power is something that's earned, never inherited. This is precisely why rising empires look so unstoppable. It's not that they're all powerful yet. It's that they are incredibly effective. Everything just works. But then, success starts to change behavior. Every victory reinforces the belief that they're on the right path. This growth creates its own momentum, and soon, expansion doesn't feel like a choice anymore. It feels natural, inevitable. At this next stage, empires start to see growth not as an option, but as a core necessity for their survival. Rome kept expanding to secure its borders. Britain expanded to protect its vital trade routes. Modern empires expand their influence to protect the very systems they've built. Growth becomes official policy. The idea of retreat becomes completely unthinkable. And this, right here, is the very moment where history slowly, silently, begins writing the final chapter. It's a pattern we've seen time and time again.
Dominance is expensive. It's a simple truth that echoes through history. To be at the top, you have to pay the price. Armies need to be paid, allies need protection, and crises demand management. When you're the one in charge, you're also responsible for keeping the entire system stable. But as the costs of maintaining that dominance inevitably rise, empires, both old and new, face a critical choice: either become more efficient, or start taking more from the system you're supposed to be protecting. History gives us a clear playbook of what happens next. Think about Rome. When their costs spiraled, they started debasing their currency, mixing cheaper metals into their silver coins, which eventually eroded public trust and destabilized their economy. Fast forward a few centuries to the British Empire. They financed their global reach by accumulating staggering amounts of debt, a burden that would ultimately contribute to their decline. So what about today? Modern powers have gotten a bit more sophisticated. They rely on leverage, credit, and the grand assumption that economic growth will continue forever. For now, the system holds. But it's all built on a very fragile foundation: confidence. And confidence, as we all know, can shatter in an instant. The interesting thing about this kind of imperial overextension is that it doesn't require conquering new lands anymore. It's a slow burn, built on obligations. It's the security guarantees you make to other nations. It's the vast economic commitments you're tied into. It's the complex web of political entanglements that pull you in every direction. Suddenly, the dominant power becomes responsible for everything, everywhere, all at once, even for problems it had no hand in creating. This is the real trap of being number one. Every minor conflict seems to demand your involvement. Every global crisis, from financial meltdowns to pandemics, requires your intervention. And when things go wrong, who gets the blame? The leadership at the top. The empire becomes the focal point of global expectations. Everyone looks to you for a solution, for stability, for leadership. And the one thing about expectations is that they never, ever decrease. They only grow, adding more weight to an already heavy crown. It's a relentless cycle, and it makes you wonder how long any power can bear that weight before it starts to crack. Ever wonder how great empires fall? It's almost never a big, dramatic invasion that does them in. History tells us a different story. The real cracks always start from the inside. Think about it. We see the same patterns repeating over and over again. Inequality starts to skyrocket, with a huge gap between the rich and the poor. People lose faith in their institutions, the government, the courts, you name it. Society becomes deeply divided, with political sides that can't even talk to each other. Even our shared culture begins to break apart, with everyone having their own version of the truth and their own sense of identity. These aren't just random problems, they're signs of a system under stress. As empires grow bigger and more complex, they often stop working for the average person. When people feel the system is rigged, it loses its legitimacy, and that's the tipping point. The fall doesn't start with a bang, but with a crack from within. Thanks for watching. Have you ever wondered how empires really end? It's not always a sudden crash or a dramatic collapse. Sometimes, it's a quiet turning point. The system they built grows so large, it becomes bigger than the empire itself. Trade networks, once dependent, start finding their own paths. Allies, once loyal, begin to act independently. The institutions they established start running on their own, without any central command. Power doesn't just vanish, it leaks away, slowly but surely. Influence disperses, like water seeping through cracks. Leadership, once absolute, becomes contested from all sides. Control becomes more of a symbol than a reality. The empire might still exist on the map, its flags might still fly, but it no longer defines the world. It's just one piece of a puzzle it no longer controls. Ever wonder how great empires really end? Forget the Hollywood explosions and dramatic collapses. The truth is far more subtle, and it's a lesson we often miss. Empires rarely fall in a blaze of fire. They just fade away. Think about it. As an empire peaks, individual decisions start to matter less. Leadership gets a bit weaker, a bit less decisive. Meanwhile, new centers of power, new ideas, and new technologies start popping up elsewhere. It happened to Rome, which slowly fragmented. It happened to the British Empire, which transitioned into something new. People always expect a sudden, catastrophic end, but history usually delivers a quiet transition. Why? Because success is a trap. When you're at the top, the urgency to adapt disappears. And that urgency is what drives innovation and sustains power. Once it's gone, a slow, inevitable decline sets in. It's not really a failure, it's just entropy, the natural way systems wind down.